Welcome to the Start, Build, Grow Show. Today we have an amazing episode and another amazing guest for you. Today we are going to be talking about one of the most important things in building a construction company and a roofing company, and that's hiring, training, and retaining employees. And we have an expert with us that's going to talk all about that. So stay tuned.
JobLimits is a fully customizable back office solution.
Track leads, jobs, tasks from one easy-to-use software.
And with the largest ecosystem of integrated partners, if we don't do it, we have a friend who does.
Learn how the number one back office system in roofing
can help you be efficient, be organized, be professional, and be profitable.
Stop driving job site to job site or texting and emailing photos. Know what's happening across your business. Get started for free today.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Start, Build, Grow Show. I am here today with my man, Matt Dibara. And Matt has, this guy, from what I understand, you were born a contractor, fourth generation Mason, and in the construction space, and you created a program called Contractor Consultants, and you kind of dedicated your career to helping revolutionize the recruiting and hiring process. So I'm excited to have you. I'm excited to dive into that stuff, and we'll get to know you first a little bit. But welcome, Matt. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me, Randy. I'm pumped up. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So in traditional fashion here, we just want to, we love to share the story. This show is all about the entrepreneurial journey in the contracting space. And how did you, fourth generation guy, I'm interested in how did you get into the business, and give me your backstory.
Growing up as a little kid, I always wanted to be like my dad. He came home dirty. He built cool things. And, back then there was no camera phone. So I used to see the printouts, the photo albums, but I always admired what he did, and we're just blue collar. I'm just a blue collar guy. My great grandfathers came here from Italy to America, tried to build the American dream, and we're contractors through and through, and that passed through the family. And I got excited by it. At my first day on the job, officially paid, I made $3 an hour, and I was 9 years old. So that was the start of it. And things grew quickly from there. My dad did something very smart. He paid me based on my skill sets. So he started me at the very bottom, picking up trash. And then I was paid based on how fast I learned. So by 11, 12 years old, I was laying brick, and I was paid like a bricklayer. And so I just grew very quickly in the industry because I was always excited to make more money and have more responsibility. And that was kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
That's awesome. And, coming up in that space, it's obviously a little bit of a niche area. Where are you from originally? I read here you still in California, or still on the East Coast or West Coast?
California. So I'm originally from outside of Boston, so East Coast. I grew up with a lot of chimneys, working next to my roofing friends, arguing about who's flashing what and how this is going to work. And we're talking about how we have both really high workers' comp rates. So I love the roofing space specifically, but outside of Boston originally.
That's awesome. So where is that business now? You grew up with your dad as a generational guy. Where's that business currently?
So relocated to California about 9 years ago. Kind of really wanted to reinvent things in the warmer weather, and grew it very quickly. We got 9 crews. We do residential, commercial, and government prevailing wage work. That looks like high-end residential, commercial space, so like your banks, and then we do the government stuff, police stations, fire stations, things like that.
Nice. So I heard a rumor that you've kind of got into some pretty cool areas in the California market, pretty cool homes and that sort of thing. Tell me about that.
I got to see it's pretty wild. I'm very fortunate. A lot of the people that I saw growing up on TV, we're working at their homes now, and it's a special thing, but it's a milestone for the family business. To think we started with humble backyards and chimneys, and now we're working on, 8-figure and sometimes even 9-figure homes. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know it's funny because my second, third degree of separation there. It's people I've known that worked in those arenas. Like we got to be very cautious. You can't talk about names and those sort of things unless somebody you do have permission to talk about. But it's just a whole different world, right? Once you get into like homes that are like that vastly unique and customized, and it's cool. I think a lot of us, even as roofing contractors, you know, we have that signature job, like, oh, we want to get more of those, get into the specialty stuff, and it was pretty cool because like you've had some features. I was blessed a couple of years ago to be featured. We did this roof. It was called the Castle Roof, and it was this just big old Victorian home in downtown Denver that had all this like custom built metal. It was like a very steep roof, very large. It had a lot of custom metal that was all built for the ridges and the chimneys, and it was just an incredibly, really, really cool home. And we submitted it and ended up winning an award, and kind of got featured in some magazines, and got like a gift from the manufacturer, which was a GAF product, and then some roofing magazine kind of recognized it. It's pretty cool. So you've experienced a few of those sort of things, it seems like, as well. So talk about some of that.
Yeah, I mean, we got recognized by Congress for quality and craftsmanship. We've been in the business over 100 years in the family, so that was pretty cool. We did the Veterans Memorial Cemetery. I did a project where Charlie Chaplin's footprints were set in concrete, and the walkway was sinking. And they were like, hey, no pressure. It was Jim Henson Studios, so the Muppets. And they're like, hey, you got to cut out this timeless piece of history. And if you break it, no big deal. So I was like, no problem. We'll take care of it. We'll get this taken care of. So we show up, and he's got like filled people, and my foreman calls my site super, and he's like, hey, like we have like 10 people taking photos and watching us. Like, am I really supposed to do this timeless, thing here that if I mess it up, it's done? But we get some real interesting stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool. So I want to touch a little bit, and we're going to dive into some of the stuff you've done after building the business, but 100-year-old business, 4th generation. A lot of companies never make it past 2 generations. Let's talk about that for a minute. How do you feel like you guys have been able to, maybe pass on and create that generational business, whereas a lot of companies, a lot of different industries never make it. It's like the 2nd generation, has like a 50% drop off, and then the 3rd generation is like an 80% drop off or something. It's like, it's crazy, the drop off of how companies succeed after, once you start adding those generations in there.
Well, I thought about this often. For anyone listening, the things that I take away is we were very principle based. So my great grandfathers, they never started as contractors. So they worked for neighbors originally, and they did it because they loved it. So they never got in this industry to make money. Never. The humble roots were artistry, craftsmanship. Like, they loved it, a day off was a day working. That's how they were, right? Like, on their day off, it was like, we're going to go fix so-and-so's thing or do that. I remember my dad telling me those stories. So big passion about what they did. And then principles. I remember I was about 10 years old. My grandfather sat me down. I was counting money my first week. I got paid or whatever. And he said, look, I want to teach you something about this business. He said, 2 things you need to remember. He said, honest day's work for an honest day's pay. He says, you'll never get rich off one customer. And he said, number 2, he said, treat customers like they're your neighbors. And that stuck with me always. He said, any question you ever come across in business, if you imagine that they're your neighbor, you will automatically find the answer. He's like, there will be no discussion. There'll be no debate. And so that passed down from my dad, my uncle, to myself. And we just had these very principle-based things. And then my dad was smart. He started me at the bottom. There was no entitlement. I mean, like bottom, picking up trash. That my grandfather did the same thing with my dad. My great-grandfathers did that with my grandfather. They were like, Sonny, you're trash duty. That's how he started. And so that was a big part of it. And then the other big thing was fast growth. So start very low and then grow quickly. Like my dad, I was getting raises every 3 to 4 months. Like, my dad would literally write down skills, and he'd be like, as soon as you can do these things, you'll get this much money. And so I was always very motivated to grow. And then he never forced me to be in the business. He was like, look, you want to explore companies? When I was in college, I interned with one of the largest companies in the East Coast, on a $200 million project. And he was like, you want to go see if the grass is greener? Go ahead. So I was employee number 1,367 or whatever the number was. Nobody knew me. Nobody cared about me. And after like 3 months, I was like, please, Dad, please take me back, So
yeah,
those were kind of the fundamentals of what I think made us really stick around.
And I love that because I think in all of blue collar, all the contracting space, there's a lot of companies that are family, that are generational. It's funny that just the other day, so I've been asked this multiple times, and I ask this question to others as well as a business consultant. I'll ask somebody, hey, what's the vision? Like, what's your succession plan for the business? A lot of people don't think about that when they're starting. They don't think about, begin with the end in mind. They don't think about what the succession plan is. So when I'm asking that question and trying to, press in there, people get stumped. They maybe have not thought about it in depth. And even myself, when I asked myself that question, it was like, do I want to sell it? Do I want a lifestyle business? Do I want, to pass it on? And for me to come, I have a business partner and we both have sons, right? My son's 8, just went into 3rd grade, and his son is 7. And the answer for us was, we want to see what interest level the kids have in it. If they want nothing to do with the business, then that's going to help write the script of what the succession plan is. And if they show an interest of, hey, then I want to learn how do I go on job sites, Dad? How do I sell roofs? How do I, take me out? And they start showing interest in the business. I want to learn business. Great. Then I can kind of groom them to kind of be a generational, kind of pass it on. But what's funny is the other day I was just talking about, he's 8, right? I'm talking to my kiddo, and he was, he's like, oh, Dad, because he's really in basketball. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to go play in the NBA, Dad. I'm like, okay. So what happens if that doesn't work? He says, well, then I can just come work with you, right? And that was like the first time he's ever really said, like, hey, Dad, you have a business, and maybe I can be a part of that someday. So it was kind of cool. It tickled me. It's like, yes, shoot for the stars, brother. If you want to go play basketball, I'm going to get you the best coaching and training you could possibly get. Let's play every day, whatever. But if for some reason that doesn't work and you do have interest in the business, let's start talking about it now. I love that. So he's 8, right? You start at 8 and 9. So it's crazy to think, how to start grooming that. But I think there's something to be said about, I wouldn't ever force him to do that, right? It's like he's got to show that initiative and interest. Like, I created this company because it was a time in my life and passion and what I wanted to do. I don't want to be that guy that's like, well, you're going to take this over because it's what your destiny is. I want to make sure that he has his own choices.
I growing up, I was forced to learn it. So my family had a rule. This was another thing I never thought of until now. The rule was, you learn the business, but you don't have to stick with it. My dad told me at a young age, he was like, you will learn this. He's like, whether or not you just do it at your own house, whether you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, I don't care. So like, I had to learn it. And my sister was out in the field, like she'd be out in the field for a couple of days here and there, and like had to learn what it meant to work with your hands. But like, for my sister, it was the opposite, right? Because she was like, I'm never doing this again. I want no part of this, right?
Yeah.
Snow plowing, all that stuff. She would go with my dad. She went the total other way. She really appreciated working in an office. I was the opposite. I fell in love with it. So yeah, I forgot that they had done that. They were like, you will learn this, but whether, like my uncle, he eventually went a different route later in life when my dad and him kind of split apart. And so it was this notion of like, learn what it means to work with your hands and understand what Dad does every day when he comes home dirty. But like, my sister and I were total opposites.
Yeah. I love that. I think there's so many amazing takeaways for the audience that are listening to this, because many of us, we have families in our business, and we got to think about, what's the succession plan? How do you create a company? Like, this is the question, and this, I'm just going to leave with this question, and we'll switch it up a little bit. But I've been asked this before too. What is your 100-year goal? You guys, you said this is a 100-year-old business. Like, that is almost unheard of in the world, right? Very, very, very few companies ever go that. Most companies fail within 2 years in our industry. So if you ask yourself that question, like, what is the 100-year vision for your goal? And then implement principles now that can be passed on long after you're gone out of the business, to then create something that lasts the test of time. Super cool, man. I can nerd out on that stuff. I love it. I love this industry. Sounds like you love it as well. But so you've been in the industry a while, and one of the keys to success is being able to hire, train, recruit, and retain people. So let's talk about that. How did that come about, and how did you end up going into the coaching consulting space there? And let's dive into some strategies on how that our audience can take away.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I learned it because I made a big mistake. 2019, right around there, I was at the pinnacle of the business. I was doing a big government job, 3 or 4 commercial jobs, and like 4 celebrity homes. I mean, it was like, just like we were cruising. and we weren't paying attention to hiring, and it almost tanked the business, which, like you mentioned, fourth generation business, it's like, family's been in the industry. It's like, this is not what you want to do. So I lost near $1 million in the span of like 3 to 4 weeks because my team kept saying, we got to hire, we need more people. We can't keep selling this work and do it well. And I just wasn't paying attention. I was just like, this person was referring us, that person. And so it all kind of came crashing down. Not in a bad way. We just had to restructure. We lost a bunch of contracts and it was messy. And I said, I never want to learn this lesson again. And so I became obsessed with hiring and building out teams because the labor market had shifted. So I was doing the same thing the whole time, but the market shifted, right? It was just like, I was going to Craigslist, going to Indeed, going to Zip, like doing the basic things, and just nothing worked anymore. Calling people, reaching out to my vendors. And it was like the well was complete. It was like showing up to a well one day, you're spinning your little arm, you're like, okay, give my water, and nothing's coming up, and you're panicking.
Yeah.
So that was what started it. And I just became obsessed. I spent the next 1.5 to 2 years, just as much money as I could, time, figuring out what worked, built a system, worked for me, helped other people do it, filmed a course, got endorsed by ZipRecruiter and Indeed, and then built a company that actually just does it for people because the course was great for some, but not for everybody. And that's kind of where our journey is. But it's 4 parts, right? You got to find people in massive quantities. You got to be able to vet them quickly, because the minute I fill your pipeline, if you can't sift, sort, and screen and bring A-list people to the front of the line, you're screwed. And then you got to know how to hire them, because a lot of people just email an offer letter, and then they never come to work for you because they shop it, right? They go to their existing employer, hey, I got this offer, and they go, I'll give you 10% more than that, don't leave. And they go, well, shoot, this is kind of nice, right? So there's all these things that are happening, and then you got to retain people, and you got to maximize their output and motivate them. So 4 steps. And, we can dive into what this looks like for the listeners, but it's really, this is the most important thing. And I have a client who I study him, but he does high level VC merger and acquisitions. So constantly buying companies. And I was asking him, and he said, look, we don't even buy companies anymore. He's like, we buy people. He's like, that's it. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah, we want the staff list. We want to know he's like, I don't care about their brand. I don't care about their client list. I don't care about their past cut. Like, we're not even looking at that. He's like, if they have 6 or 7 or 100 or 200 key people, he's like, that's all. And I started thinking, I'm like, wow, it's so important. The same thing, right? People can solve your sales problem, right? Great salesperson can solve your client retention issues, can solve your freedom if you're a business owner or manager. Like, it's all this one thing, but I believe that big companies don't want to teach this stuff, because why would I teach you how to poach for me if I'm a big company and I'm weak, right? Meaning it's hard to really have a tight big company. Like, we find our clients are poaching, the smaller businesses, 10, 20, 50, 100 employees are easily poaching from the much bigger ones because they got loose ends. So that's kind of a, high level perspective of how important I think it is. I think it's the most important thing right now.
You're absolutely right. We're in an age where the currency is personnel, right? It's people, and we need to make sure that you live and die by the people you have in your organization. And I'm a big believer in you can't like manipulate a culture. You can't like force a culture one way or another. You got to hire people to fit a culture you're trying to be intentional about with your business, and having this process in place is the way to do that. And so many companies, when I got first hired in this industry, it was a one phone interview, and we met at like a gas station or something, and they handed me a clipboard and a couple polo shirts and said, hey, congratulations, go sell roofs. That was my onboarding. That was how I got into roofing. And so many companies do that. And it's not necessarily, I don't think they're intentionally doing it wrong. They just don't know what they don't know. And guys like myself and you now are like, hey, we paid our dumb tax and we figured out these things. How do we help others do that? So let's dive into that a little bit. Without giving us all the goods, we want to give us enough to get these listeners excited and get them kind of going in the right direction. Let's break down those 4 key points and give me like a couple takeaways from each, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the toxic loop that companies want to avoid, and I was there at one point, is you have to, your golden egg is your culture, right? That's what we're ultimately building. It's like, I build a team to then build a culture, right? Which is kind of the unspoken rules, if you will, which when you see a company that's good culture, it's like, this is the way we do things around here, right? Without the manager being like, do this, do that, or the owner. It's like, no. So this is what we need. You know, like I'll still audit my job sites, right? And I'll just walk by, and some of the people I don't, you know, I'll put on a shirt and they don't see me, and I'll hear them be like, no, we got to clean this up a little neater. I'm like, that's culture. It's embedded within the organization, and not in a negative way. And we have to be able to enforce our culture. A lot of companies can't enforce if someone shows up late, right? They're like, well, the handbook says it's the third time I got to fire them, but what do I do? So it's like we need to fix the first 3 steps so that we can actually build the culture and retain it. Because otherwise, you know, the good people are like, well, I can get away with anything then. So how do we do it? Well, you got to find people in droves. You got to have a big find list. And so some of those strategies, the key things that work right now, number one is incentivizing your current team is really easy, but it's not so much the what, it's the how. So if I'm going to take, let's say I got a team of 20 people. If I go and have a team meeting and say, all right, team, everybody here gets $500 if they find me somebody. Doesn't work. What works is if I know Mike has been here for 20 years and his wedding anniversary is coming up and he loves to travel to Hawaii. I say, hey, Mike, can I sit down with you for a minute? Listen, we're doing a really neat incentive. You know, I'd love to put together a trip. You know, we'll put together, I'll purchase flight tickets. If you know anybody that's looking for XYZ job role, it's really important to us that we continue to grow our team. When you can incentivize people specifically to what they want, it multiplies and magnifies your ability to get the right person. I found this out right around that 2020 mark, 2019. I had a male nurse and he had a Dodger keychain. And I'm always looking for people, right? Always hiring. And so he was just like drawing my blood or whatever. And I said, yeah, we're hiring, you know, do you know anybody? He goes, he wasn't even looking, right? He goes, no. I said, well, if you do, we're giving away really good Dodger seats. He stops, puts the needle down, looks at me and says, wait, what? I go, yeah, if you know anybody looking, we're a masonry company, laborers, masons, foremen, you know, I said, really, you know, front row seats for us, hiring is really important and you might know somebody good. He goes, my nephew just came back from college. He did this with a guy that he knew in the summers. Let me talk to him. We hired the kid 3 days later. Right? He's still with us today. It's incentivizing people, knowing how important it is to find the right people, and then saying, I'm going to go deep with incentivizing my team works really well. There's another way where you can reach out to what we call partner lists, or this is called a one-to-many strategy. So let's imagine your trade schools, your universities. If you want project managers, estimators, salespeople, you go to trade schools and universities and say, look, you know, we're hiring. This is the company that I represent or own. You know, do you have an alumni list you can put this in front of? You know, here's a great idea of who we're looking for. These organizations have 5 and 10 year alumni lists, or you go to your suppliers, right? Is there a company that is shutting down? Is there a company that, you know, maybe just got bought and sold, and you know that their culture might be a little weak because they went through a merger and acquisition? But going through, you know, your workers' comp, companies are great. I have workers' comp companies that refer me people all the time. They say, hey, look, this person just left payroll. You know, you might want to reach out. You know, here's a name of somebody. Like when you start thinking of all the ways you can fill your pipeline, you know, food trucks are great. Reaching out to food trucks, other industries, like I had an electrician who I knew who helped us hire. So those are like kind of the grassroots strategies. There's another good one. If you're looking for that really skilled roofer that, you know, 10 years in the business, what you can do is you can reach out to your supplier and say, hey, look, I'd like to sponsor coffee and donuts during your busiest 2 hours. So from 7 to 9 a.m., I'll do it every day, Monday through Friday. Cost you $30-$40 a day, right? Mm-hmm. In exchange for that, though, you say, I want to put a card on the table that says we're hiring. We're hiring, top pay, 3 bullet points as to why they should work for your company. What you'll find is eventually, and we've done this with clients, not in all 50 states yet, but darn close, is that roofer that's showing up, getting loaded up with material. They see this booth, they grab the coffee, they got yelled at that day for being 3 minutes late, even though they, you know, were ahead on schedule for the job they just did previously. They look down and they go, oh, wow, top pay. They scan the QR code. They see your video, what we call a career video. That's how you get in front of those people that already have a job, already have a company truck, already are paid really well. So we have 37 different proven ways to find people. Those are geofencing is another big one. It's a digital strategy for your competitors and suppliers, but it's just about building that real robust pipeline. And those are a few ways to do it.
I love that. And there's some great things. I mean, taking some notes here myself as well. And And I think there's some amazing things, some amazing takeaways there. I would think that we've got to be a little careful with vendors, because what we don't want to do is rock the boat too much to where like other contractors are like, yo, why'd you let this company come in here and start recruiting at the supplier when I'm one buying a lot of materials? So I would think that we got to be very careful there to kind of make sure that doesn't rock too many, be intentional with how we go about doing that. But yeah, I think some of these, it's like, what I'm taking away is you're like marketing. It's just a marketing strategy.
100%.
You're not just like, oh, I'm going to play defense and hire when I have to and hire, and just use one avenue and hope it works. It's like you're thinking about it like you would marketing. Like, how do I market my business to gain more customers? How do I market my business to gain more top level talent? And one of the things I would add on to that too is have a careers page on your website.
Yeah, and a career video.
I like that career video too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next step. Let's dive into the next one.
So when you're vetting, one of the biggest things is speed to lead, just like you would with a customer. What happens when a customer fills out your website form and doesn't hear back within, half an hour? What am I doing as a client? I'm filling out more companies, right? I'm reaching out. I'm continuing to reach out to different companies. The same concept for people who are looking for work. So if you are lucky enough to have somebody who's looking for work, getting to that resume quickly, crucial. Having a tiered process where if somebody looks really great, they move towards the final round. For example, let's say somebody just moved to your city or town, 10 years experience, their resume looks amazing. You might not want an intermediary qualifying interview where it's like, hey, do you have a driver's license? That quick pre-qualifier. You may want to send them right to a qualified, what we call second stage interview. That's important. So having an ascension model for really good people, as well as getting to them quickly. Another thing is having a skills assessment. We see a lot of companies go wrong with this, where they'll hire somebody and they'll put them in the field, right? They'll go through this vetting phase and they'll put them in the field. And within 4 to 6 hours, they don't show up. They're wearing, basketball shorts or sneakers. And it's like, what's going on, right? Your team sees this and they start to lose faith in your ability to hire, right? You as the metaphorical company, it's like, oh, here's another one. So having a skills assessment where they come to your shop or your yard or your warehouse and you pay them for 8 hours. We recommend that you have a waiver they fill out, right? That's done based on your local city or town, but pay them for 8 hours and say, all right, great. Here you go. Here's your shingles. Here's this, here's that. Go ahead, here, have at it, and have a sheet that lays it out. This is what we want to see. This is your material, boom, and let them do it. So we have clients, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, roofing, masonry, concrete, vetting within 8 hours. I mean, it's staggering. 90 to 95% of the people who make that assessment, you get to see if they show up on time, if they dress presentable, if they have their own tools, and if they can do what they say they can do. You eliminate the waste factor by a magnitude of about 90% we see. The people, at that point, it's just culture. So having that way to validate people quickly, super important.
Awesome. Love it. We created a little mini house, right? It's big enough where you can lay some shingles, but it's like a mini house to do demos and do training and stuff like that. So I love that idea. Okay. So now that we're moving right along, right? We recruited, we've got someone in the pipeline. What's the next step?
So let's say they've gone through that skills assessment. You validated their hard and soft skills. They've been through the interview. Where we see a lot of companies fall short is the offer letter. So bringing somebody in and getting that verbal commitment, companies just email the offer letter. Here you go. Here it is, right? Especially if they're leaving a company, sitting them down and going through that and asking them if there's any hesitations, any concerns, or, the powerful words are, is there any reason you might change your mind? And then shaking their hands like you'd close a sale, right? So it's not a high pressure thing of like, here's the pen, you got to sign it right now, because they may need to go to their husband or their wife. They may need to talk things over still. There might be some unspokens, but by bringing them in to go over that offer letter and then getting that soft commitment, right? Hard commitment means they sign it. I'm not saying high pressure. I mean, we've seen people try that. It doesn't change things per se, but getting that soft commitment makes a huge difference, because in the prospect's mind, they've already made a decision and a commitment to you. So sending that offer letter is a big no-no without really going through it and then handling any objections, because that's the sale at that point. You want this person, otherwise you wouldn't be giving it to them. So now it's your job. You want to treat this like you're closing a $100,000 or, depending on how big you are, $1 million or $10 million job. Like, this is your time to shine. So going through point for point for point, introducing them to the team is a big one. Walking through, getting people excited. Hey, this is Mike. He's going to be joining us here in about a week. Say hi, Mike. Introduce you to so-and-so who runs our warehouse. Like, that feeling of teamwork and camaraderie, the amount of times you'll get left in the dust is much, much less when you really seal the deal with that offer letter.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. We're moving right along, guys. This is awesome information and so many of us, there's a lot of subcontracted work and so those sort of things. But I think as roofers, we all need to have, I'm a big believer, and I help build service departments and help people really kind of diversify their business. Because a lot of times we get into the business because of one thing, like maybe it's we get some hailstorms and we're like, all right, we're just going to do residential hail work. But we got to be able to build a company that can be sustainable over time and adapt and pivot when market shift happens. As you talked about earlier, markets can change and things can happen. So, I really encourage building a company that's sustainable. And in order to do that, I feel like one of the key pillars to work on in the business is being able to do repair work, service work. And that requires in-house labor, requires in-house, trucks and the payroll and the hiring, this onboarding process you're talking about. So even though someone listening to this may be like, well, I just do outsource. I just, outsource all my labor. There's some takeaways here where you can, we've even created, I'm sure you probably would attest to this too, is if you're outsourcing, you're using, subcontracted labor, you still should have a vetting process and still should have an interviewing process and a testing, process to make sure that you're hiring the best crews as well, because you live and die by your quality. So there's a lot of takeaways from both perspectives. So, all right, we hired, they accepted the offer letter. Let's land this plane. Let's bring it home.
Yeah. So now you want to look at your onboarding, right? Do you have a good onboarding process? The first 2 weeks are the most crucial. That's when the nerves are high. I recommend a check-in process, and this works for if you're contracting your labor. Check in early and often. So typically that's, you set them up and then it's clear who their direct report is. And then we recommend common check-in. So, we usually do a 2-week, then a 30-day, then a 3-month. So you're checking in within the first 4 months. You're sitting down 3 times, all eligible for a raise. So that way things don't feel weird when there's little hiccups, right? It's already pre-scheduled. Hey, we're sitting down. You've been here now. It's 2 weeks. What do you think? And then again in 30 days. All right, so you've been here now 6 weeks. These are some things we're noticing that are great. A few areas you can improve. By structuring the communication, you're going to find that the relationship's a lot better. Finding ways to incentivize your team. We've got a model that we scale that's pretty easy to use, but finding a way to incentivize them, whatever that looks like in your company. And then the other big one is what we call an honest employee audit, but auditing your team for feedback. We do it randomly. So we have questions. They have a 1 to 10 scale. So you don't know what they say. It's literally you click a button. That's been pretty powerful. A lot of companies go into, we're confident our team's happy. How on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with your current pay and feel your work is appreciated? A lot of employers have gotten answers where they go, I didn't think I was going to get an average of a 3 or a 4 on this one, right? So really getting to the grassroots of what is the pulse of your team? And you can't do that by asking them. And managers are good, but you don't get it unless you get it right from the horse's mouth. So having a way to assess that feedback is really important.
I love that. And in the past, we've done, the localized or even like a national, great places to work, or like the best place in Colorado or Boston or whatever. There's usually some sort of local and programming that you can, whether it's a magazine or some sort of article or something that comes out, like the best places to work, fill in the blank and where the city is. Look into that in your local area and see what the protocols are to get that. If you're thinking about setting a goal for your business, for me, why would that not be one of the best goals? Right, when so many of us as owners, as entrepreneurs, we want a great work environment. We want to create opportunities for people, especially the people that we're working with, that you're working with. And if you may not be there right now, but press into that, research, reverse engineer what it takes to qualify. And when we've done that, we found that assessment you talked about, it's an anonymous thing that every employee gets. and they fill out a form, and then you get that feedback, and you don't know the name or whatever, but it kind of gives you a framework of how well you're doing as a company. And you'd be surprised. You may think you have this awesome thing, a great culture going, and you'll learn some things by kind of, stepping out of your own ego and really diving into, hey, how well are we actually handling and taking care of our clients? So I love that. I think that's some amazing takeaways. So as we're starting to wind, man, I'm going to put you on the spot in just a minute. Just give me your golden nugget. If you've heard the show, we like to leave our listeners with, like, hey, what's one of the biggest piece of advice we've ever gotten as far as being an entrepreneur? But before we get into that, like, if some of this is interesting to me and I want to connect with you further, what's my best way to do that?
Our website is great. The Contractor Consultants, plural, with an S there.com, or shoot me an email, md@thecontractorconsultants.com.
All right. Thecontractorconsultants.com.
Yep.
And md@thecontractorconsultants.com with an S. Love it, man. Thank you so much. I'm sure there's some people out there that are like, hey, man, I want to learn more and press into this and get better at it. So, you've dedicated time to help other contractors. And I love that. And I think that's where the industry has gone. That's why we do this show. And, it's our 5th year now doing the show. And it's all about just how do we take a platform and learn and help others, right? But here's the secret behind all that. I learn more than I teach. As the host of the show for 5 years, like bringing on people like Matt and bringing on all the guests that we bring on, I'm just constantly learning, constantly taking notes, constantly finding ways to level up my own game. So if you're listening to this and you've got some value out of this, please, like it, subscribe, comment, share it out with your friends. We love that interaction. It definitely helps us. And again, we're so grateful for our amazing sponsors that support the show. And Matt, as we start to wind this down, my man, golden nugget. So what is like some of the maybe something that really stands out as the best piece of entrepreneurial advice that you've either gotten or that you would want to leave with the audience today?
Oh gosh, the best piece of advice. I mean, the biggest thing I found was thinking bigger. Setting bigger goals for me was a big one. I think how, like you said, the 100-year plan. I think if you set that big goal, you've got that big North Star. In the, when things get tough, they get uneasy, things change, like having that real big lofty goal. I think when I did that, that's when things changed, and the goal constantly changed and things shifted, but having a clear defined big goal that you're working towards every day that, I don't know if there's much, for me at least, that was the biggest single breakthrough that I had.
I love that. And something I actually, talked about the other day in one of my little short, I do these little short videos that I put out a lot. And I was just thinking about, it's easy to think about a lot of us operate off of a fear of failure, right? We don't want to fail, and just it's human nature, it's entrepreneurial nature to just worry about that. But what about that fear of success? And there's something about we work, we set these goals, but like, are they big enough? Are we like maybe afraid, or we don't have enough confidence and self-confidence? Do we believe in ourselves enough to actually reach for that bigger North Star and think bigger than we actually think? So I love that. Don't limit yourself, and think bigger, and shoot for the stars. I love it, man. Matt Dibara, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an awesome conversation, and appreciate you, man. Wish you the best. Take care. God bless.
Thank you.